Hello, my name is Alina Smaranda, and I'm a sports medicine resident doctor in Romania at the National Institute of Sports Medicine in Bucharest. First of all, let me congratulate you for the 25th anniversary of your association. In the following minutes, I'm going to speak to you about the early prediction of future performance in order to select the best athletes better than all the rest. Selection is an important part of the athletic performance. It is a continuous process based on scientific criteria who early detects and subsequently validates the talented athletes. Selection operates at various levels and aims to identify predictors of genetic endowment, identify health conditions that increase the risk of injury or death during sports participation, and select an appropriate sport according to particular abilities and physical status of the persons. For athlete selection, two issues are essential. What kind of performance do we want to predict, and what methods can be used to predict the performance? The main characteristics that lead to success in sport, as we already know, are talent, health status, effort capacity, trainability, body composition, nutritional status, and recovery capacity, very important one, resistance to injury, psychological skills, motor control, and nonetheless, biomechanics. But how to discover all of this? Let's go into the depths of sports medical selection. Sports medicine selection has 6 criteria that show us very important information in order to make predictions on athletic performance. This would be health status, genetic criterion, anthropometric one, psychological one, functional effort capacity, and biochemical one. Let's start with the first one. The health status. We know that the health status, an excellent health is required for great performance. The younger the athlete, the stricter is this criterion. The medical exam should include the medical history, the physical examination, diagnostic tests, blood tests. You must also take into consideration the contraindication of physical activity, both temporary and permanent ones. Also, of great importance is to identify the condition that may limit athletic performance. You may be familiar with the recommended components of the pre-participation examination. Well, the PPE is focused on medical history and examination of the cardiac, neurologic, orthopedic system, and the mental health status. The goals of the pre-participation examination in athletes are to protect the health of athletes and to ensure a safe participation in sports activity. Going next to the second criterion, the genetic one. First of all, we are interested in identifying the athlete genetic test, may it be female, a male, or a transgender. There are a lot of genetic markers linked to athletic status. Studies have shown that there are genes involved in the function of skeletal muscle, aerobic capacity, and other cellular processes. We know that athletic status as well as cardiovascular endurance are highly heritable. We can also get important information about the dynamic of certain anthropometric measurements, about the risk of injury and the recovery outcomes. But we do not have to forget about the environment. So genes and environment influence each other. They both play a big role in athletic performance. And so far, no genetic variant has reached the level of predictability for athletic success. The third criterion is the anthropometric one. It involves the measurement of certain body segments and dimension. It is critical that this criterion be part of the initial and the periodic evaluation of the athletes. We certainly need to establish the stage of physical development according to age and sex, and also to follow up the effect of training on physical development. One of the most important parameters to measure is the stature. In this way, we can predict the height of the athlete. Also, the proportion of body segments in order to select the best biotypes for certain kinds of sports discipline. In this process of talent selection, the anthropometric measurement is an important factor, and that's why, for this reason, they are made at each stage of the process. Next, we go to the fourth criterion, which is the functional and effort capacity. It is more a consequence of the training, so we operate with this criterion of selection at high performance level on elite athletes. The investigations are different depending on the aerobic and anaerobic predominance of the sports, but it's essential to make these tests and not to guess. This way, we can assess the effectiveness of training and also the recovery process. The fifth criterion is a psychological one. The mental health of the athletes has become more and more important these days. It becomes increasingly important to integrate both mental and physical aspects of the performance. It is not always about who trains harder, who trains longer in order to get the best. It is about how to optimize the performance of our athlete. And I strongly believe that from a young age, we have to prepare our athletes to enter competition with the proper mindset. The last, but not the least, is the biochemical criterion. A comprehensive panel of biochemical parameters should include key markers of nutrition, metabolic health, hydration status, muscle status, endurance performance, injury risk, inflammation, and nonetheless, overtraining. We can talk about three types of selection: the first one, the second one, and the last selection. When we talk about the first selection, we talk about the time when the child takes the first contact with the sport. Usually, it is during the childhood, between 5 or 7 years old, for example, in artistic gymnastics, in swimming, in figure skating, in other sports like football, rugby, and so on. It may be a little bit later, around 10 years old. The second selection is after 4 or 5 years of training, and at this point we evaluate the biological micromodel of the performance. All selection criteria are used. Achieved performances are also taken into consideration. And it is also the moment when we can reorientate the athletes to other sports discipline. For example, from swimming to water polo, from ice skating to hockey, and so on. When you talk about the final selection, we talk about the national and Olympic level. Of course, we have to thoroughly evaluate these athletes. We need to make sure they can cope with various challenges such as jet lag, medium altitude, psychological stress of high-level competition, physical requirements of long training periods, etc. When sports performances are equal, athletes with better health status, physical resistance, and psychological aptitudes are preferred. Where peak performance in sports is achieved before the biological maturity, early specialization may be necessary to reach the elite level. And for instance, in artistic gymnastics or figure skating, athletes perform more sports-specific training until the age of 10 compared to other Olympic sports. We also do not have to forget about the relative age effect. A range of factors may influence coach judgment on the potential of an athlete, from anthropometric, physiological, psychological, tactical, and technical. So these factors should be carefully considered when we select an athlete. In conclusion, medical sports selection must be multidisciplinary. We need a multidisciplinary approach. Sports medicine physician must be familiar with normal pattern of growth and development of children and adolescents in order to detect any abnormal patterns and provide guidance to the coaches, to the physical trainers in the design of the safe and effective training programs. Thank you very much.